Morning. So I saw a story just a bit ago about this movie Cuties that was on Netflix a while back, and the controversy on it kind of died down. And I think that the main sort of media moment around it is over, and so this is kind of late to the game. But there was an update on the story that I thought was interesting. I need to be careful how I phrase things because, YouTube, I don't want my channel to get deleted. But if we talk sensitively about the subject, if you don't know kind of the premise of the movie Cuties, there's plenty written online. The controversy was based around kind of lewd behavior that these 11, 13-year-old girls, something like that, were induced to engage in for the purpose of filming this movie, including intimate parts that were exposed on scene and kind of simulated adult activities that the girls were, again, induced to engage in for the purposes of filming this movie. And the defense or the defenders of the movie say, well, the movie is actually a critique of hyper sexualized behavior by children in media, and of course the obvious retort to that is, well, if you're trying to critique it, why are you critiquing it by inducing girls to do the thing you think is bad, right? That's like saying, look how bad drugs are while we show you people using actual drugs, or look how bad murder is, and we're gonna make that clear to you by committing a new murder, right? I mean, you're committing the crime to critique the crime is the issue, right? And so that's the question in the more recent update to the story, excuse me, is in Texas, there's a DA there who brought it before a grand jury and had Netflix indicted on, I think it was 4 felony charges related to this movie that was distributed on Netflix. And so I guess my initial take on this, and I actually had a recruit in the car with me when all this was happening, and we discussed it in relation to Oregon law, right? Because it's actually something we interact with. Reviewing the statute, and I would encourage anybody, just Google search ORS and then definition of child adult related materials, if you get the euphemism, and see what the definition is, and it includes actual or simulated, and then certain adult behaviors, including lewd and exhibition and exposing sensitive, intimate parts, right? I'm not being explicit in my terms here, but look the statute up. I mean, you don't have to be a lawyer to understand a definition as written in Oregon law, and it's relevant because Netflix, being the giant, multi-billion-dollar company that it is, distributes media globally, and then in all 50 states in the U.S. And so it's incumbent upon Netflix, being the giant corporation they are and having the deep pockets and the arsenal of lawyers that I'm sure they do, to understand the local criminal codes in all 50 states, as well as internationally. But I mean, let's just at least keep this restricted to the U.S. And my perspective here in Oregon, if it meets the definition, right, of explicit materials featuring children, and Netflix is not just paying for and obtaining the rights to this film, which was, I guess, filmed over in France, but distributing it, right, to potentially millions of viewers. I have no idea how many times this was actually viewed, but I'm sure Netflix does. that's a huge issue. I mean, just massive, right? And Netflix is, I guess, trying to argue at, a First Amendment protection, this being, arts and, a social critique of, some kind of social problem, and it being protected even, as some kind of obscene material based on some Supreme Court cases. But nevertheless, right, there are individuals who are arrested and charged with obtaining, possessing, and distributing explicit material featuring children. That happens in all 50 states. And those individuals are held to account. And so the question is, why does Netflix get special treatment, right? Or what should they, right? Because, of course, this has become tribal, right? And so people on one side of the political spectrum, for some reason, are defending this film and Netflix because it tribally somehow aligns with their politics. And then other people who don't know anything about the film, just heard generally that it's explicit material featuring children, they just automatically, well, this is bad. So I don't think you should do either of those things, right? And do some investigation carefully on your own. I wouldn't encourage anybody to actually watch the film. And again, go Google ORS and the statute related to possession of explicit material featuring children, because even seeking out and downloading or streaming that material is a crime. And if Netflix gets convicted in Texas on a roughly equivalent statute, I think that could have, again, as a layman, I'm not an attorney, huge legal implications nationwide as far as Netflix's distribution of this material. I mean, you could have district attorneys all over the country absolutely bury Netflix in indictments over this. And what's Netflix going to do if they're charged criminally in multiple counties in all 50 states for violating roughly equivalent statutes regarding, possession and distribution of explicit material featuring children? I mean, it's huge. And it's when I had the recruit, I mean, this was, more than a year ago now that this story originally became a thing. We talked about, well, if it fits the statute, right? And you potentially have probable cause to believe that the company Netflix, as well as its subscribers who went, and proactively sought out and obtained and viewed this material, have committed this crime. Like, if it were an individual, how would it ordinarily be handled? Well, you would apply for and obtain a search warrant for that individual's digital media and records from their internet service provider as far as where they were sending and receiving information for. And you would scour their house for anything as small as a micro SD card that might contain images or videos of that nature, right? And so literally, based on my reading of the statute, and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm certainly not a DA, I'm just a guy who, arrests people when they violate Oregon law. So take it, it's my opinion. I'm not speaking officially. I'm just, again, read the statute as a layman. You're allowed to do that. See what you think. Because if it fits what the process should be, and I mean, this is, interstate commerce. I'm sure there's federal laws as well relating to that same material. The FBI should have been knocking at their door and seizing servers and collecting data on viewers, right? And I mean, I am not crazy about the FBI and how they've been used as an apparent political tool of late. It's frightening, frankly. Again, my opinion. But as much as I chafe at and am hesitant about state and federal overreach, I mean, when we're talking about profiting from the exploitation of children who were induced to engage in lewd behavior and expose, private areas for the purpose of, creating this film, which Netflix is profiting from. Okay, never mind the artistic aspect of it. Like, I mean, Netflix can argue that anything they put up and stream is artistic in value. And I mean, there's some just, frankly, trash on Netflix that has, really, literally pretty much no redeeming artistic value. Now, I mean, maybe the creators of those films would disagree. But say, for example, you applied for the search warrant, the judge granted the search warrant, you're able to obtain data and servers and all that stuff from Netflix. What are you going to find when you get into the data and analytics on those servers? There might be, the vast majority of viewers were curious about the film because they heard about it in the news, or it just got suggested by Netflix, and, unknowingly they, watched 10, 15 minutes of it or all of it, hit something they didn't like and shut it down, right? But how many people watched that movie 10 times, 50 times? How many of those same people lingered on maybe 2-3 minute segments of that film where, again, young ladies in the, I think, 11 to 13 years age range were induced to engage in lewd behavior or expose certain body parts, right? And again, if possessing and obtaining that data constitutes a violation of that statute, you've got probable cause to apply for a search warrant for those people's residences, their data, their, any information from their ISP about who they're sending and receiving information to, right? I mean, this thing could be used as a really effective tool to weed out a whole lot of creepos, right? And again, I mean, trying to filter out the people who innocently or just out of curiosity because of the news cycle, or just, out of casual interest, based on their subscription to Netflix, just looked at a video. And so I'm not saying that everybody that watched this should be charged with a crime because they obtained something they're not supposed to obtain. But Netflix distributed it. They should have known better. Their lawyers should have warned them that this was probably not going to fly somewhere. And B, they've got to know who had like an unhealthy interest in this information, if you get my drift, right? And so that's the really like just wild thing to me, is that people are going out of their way to defend this, right? And again, as far as the First Amendment and free speech goes, like I'm kind of a maximalist on this, but I mean, there are limits. Yes, there are. And when you are exploiting minors for profit in an explicit way, people who are incapable of consent because of their age, and really incapable of truly understanding the, gravity of the situation, the decisions that they're making, even with like parental input, and not okay, right? I mean, this goes beyond, some sort of free expression, to the point where somebody or some children were exploited for the purpose of making this film, in my opinion. And again, don't take my word for it. I mean, there's lots that's been written about it on either side, and you can find kind of just summaries of what the movie actually contains without viewing it. Again, I would discourage you from actually viewing it just because I think it fits the statute. And if you don't live in Oregon and you're watching this, like, read up on your local regulations, because it might fit. And state to state, there might be differences in the way those statutes are worded. But in Oregon, I think it fits. And I don't think it's an overreach for some law enforcement agencies to be going and obtaining that information and following up on, again, who actually had like a highly unhealthy and repetitive interest in certain portions of these films. And I don't think that's an overreach of the government to suggest, well, because you did do these things and we have probable cause to believe that this constitutes a crime, we're going to search for evidence of the crime, and whatever else turns up in the course of that search is valid, right? And I mean, God only knows what else could be uncovered. And that's the frustrating thing about all this generally to me, and not just Cuties, but the whole Epstein thing and the Ghislaine Maxwell trial following. And again, don't take my word for it, read up on it, but I mean, the lists of people involved in that network of exploitation were sealed by the court, right? We don't get to know. Why? I don't know. I mean, she was convicted, right? She was trafficking children. So where are the Johns, right? Where are the clients, right? Why aren't they being held to account? It seems like there's a certain segment of the population that's like really like overly and unhealthily interested in advocating for and protecting this kind of material, and introducing concepts like this to children as young as elementary school in a public setting, right? And then they want to start fostering discussions and thought processes in children who really have no need or business contemplating very, very adult issues, right? And I want to be careful here, because I understand there is some need and some value to have honest conversations with children who have questions about very human issues, especially children who may not fit kind of the standard mold, let's say, for most children, and have some identity issues, which frankly are going to be a challenge for them, and they need help understanding. But some kind of like broad systemic, just we're going to introduce these ideas kind of unprompted, and get very, very young children thinking in these terms. There's the quote-unquote don't say gay bill in Florida, and I agree that the framing of that is inappropriate, given what the statute actually does. It has also been called the anti-groomer bill, and I haven't read enough to really take a firm position on that one yet. Maybe I'll do a video on it later, but there's some I have seen and been part of investigations of just some horrific things that have been done to children, and had really just unfortunately frank discussions with very young girls about where family members put certain things, and so I don't think you can be sensitive enough about that stuff, okay? And if somebody's getting a little overzealous with a big multinational corporation like Netflix for distributing data that required the adult exploitation of very young children, I would prefer we as a society err on the side of caution when it comes to protecting kids. And I'm not some, oh my God, let somebody think of the children sort of person, right? I don't think this is an unwarranted level of concern. Stuff's serious, super serious. It's highly damaging to children, and I don't get why so many people go out of their way to defend it. That's all I got on that. Again, as always, super uplifting. Thank you for checking in. It's been fun. Let me know what you think. If you take the time to look at it, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And not at the video. Don't watch the video. But if you look into the topic, drop a comment, leave a like. Feel free to share the video if you like what you see. Appreciate you taking the time. It's been fun. See you in the next one.